Snow-blanketed Asheville, the golden glow of Christmas lights shimmering across rooftops. A sudden screech of brakes tore through the silent night. The car door swung open and Nora Bennett stepped out her breath, turning to mist in the icy air. No warning, no message. After 3 years away from home, she had returned, carrying both longing and a chilling premonition. She had no idea that this night of reunion would mark the beginning of a nightmare. The Mercer mansion glowed with life. Christmas music mingling with the clink of crystal glasses and laughter. Nora smiled faintly, picturing her daughter Lily radiant amid the celebration. But as she crossed the snow-covered garden, her smile vanished. On a wooden bench by the porch sat a small figure curled into itself beneath a thin blouse, shoulders trembling, hair soaked through. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes until one melted as her eyes opened. Mom. The weak whisper dissolved into the wind. Nora rushed forward, pulling off her coat and wrapping it around her daughter. Her hand touched skin, cold as marble, drained of all warmth. Tears mixed with melting snow. From inside the house came laughter clear and sharp. What kind of daughter-in-law miscarries 4 times a man's hoarse voice jeered? A woman answered, "She's faking the depression." The laughter spread bright and cruel. Nora clenched her jaw, lifted Lily in her arms, the girl's wet slippers falling away, leaving dark trails on the steps. She strode to the door, kicked it open. Warm air and the scent of wine rushed out. Every head in the room turned. Under the glittering lights, Nora stood drenched and trembling, her daughter limp in her arms. The room fell silent. Sylvia Mercer in a green velvet gown raised an eyebrow. "Good heavens, Nora, you should have told us you were coming. We weren't prepared." Nora laid Lily on the sofa, covered her with a throw, and said hoarsely but firmly, "If I had warned you, you would have had time to hide your sins." Gregory Mercer, the former judge and Colin's father, adjusted his tie and said with authority, "Lily just stepped out for air. She needs to learn responsibility." Nora gave a dry, bitter laugh. Responsibility for not giving your powerful family an heir. The air grew heavy. Colin, Lily's husband, leaned against the wall collar, open a glass of wine in hand. "My mother-in-law is still dramatic as ever. Lily's fragile, that's all. She never takes care of herself." Nora's voice thundered fragile. "She almost froze to death outside while you raise your glass." Colin shrugged. "She brings it on herself." Nora glared at him, fire blazing in her eyes. "No, you all drove her to the edge." Gregory stepped forward, voice cold. "You're crossing the line. This is a private family matter." Nora met his stare and said through tight lips, "There's no private matter anymore. My daughter was left outside in -18 degrees while this respectable family toasted by the fire. If you had an ounce of humanity, you'd have opened that door." Sylvia lifted her chin, smiling faintly. "We've been more than tolerant, Nora. The girl is weak and ungrateful." Nora's reply was sharp as a blade. "She's weak because you've crushed her spirit and treated her like she's worthless." Lily stirred her trembling hand, searching for her mother's. Nora clasped it gently, then lifted her gaze to Colin. "You all think I'm just a retired coach. No money. No influence. But I'm the current director of the National Sports Development Fund, the one worth millions, the same fund you've been chasing for sponsorship for your law firm." The words froze the room. Colin's hand trembled, spilling wine. Gregory stiffened. Sylvia's face paled. Nora began to walk forward slowly, her words echoing through the stunned silence. "I didn't come here to ask permission. I came to take my daughter home." She lifted Lily again, each step leaving wet prints on the crimson carpet as the snow on her boots melted into water. "If you walk out of this house, don't expect mercy from me," Gregory barked. Nora didn't look back. I fought on international arenas. Do you think I fear a retired judge?" The door slammed shut behind her, the gust of wind snuffing out the unfinished notes of jingle bells. Outside, the snowfall thickened. Nora pulled her coat tighter around her daughter's eyes, fixed on the winding road descending toward the city lights. In the cutting cold, the 62-year-old woman kept walking her frame, small but unyielding. In her arms, Lily's faint breath flickered like a candle. And within Nora, a fire had awakened, the fire of a mother, once underestimated, now rising to reclaim justice for her broken child. Nora opened the door to her small apartment, the cold air slicing through the warmth inside. She laid Lily down gently on the worn-out sofa and wrapped her in an old wool blanket. The dim yellow light cast long shadows across the walls, where medals and framed photos of her old kickboxing team still hung proudly. Lily's breathing was shallow and uneven. Nora brought a bowl of warm water and carefully wiped her daughter's face. That was when she saw them, the faint bruises on her wrists, the dark marks along her shoulders, silent witnesses to months of suffering that Lily had endured alone. "How long have you been living like this?" Nora asked softly. Lily didn't answer her gaze, drifting far away. Memories rushed back, pulling Nora 3 years into the past to her daughter's wedding day. Back then, Colin Mercer had seemed like the perfect man, a young, charming lawyer who made everyone believe Lily had finally found happiness. Nora had even cried when she saw her daughter laughing beneath the lavender archway. But that happiness had been nothing more than a polished illusion. Soon after the wedding, Lily's messages became rare, her voice weaker with every call. And then, one night, Nora had heard her crying through the phone. "I can't have children, Mom. He's changed." Now, looking at the frail figure before her, Nora felt the weight of guilt crushing her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for leaving you alone in that cold house." Lily's eyes fluttered open, her voice raspy. "Mom, they hate me. They call me useless. My mother-in-law made me stand outside in the cold to clear my head. Colin didn't say anything, he just watched me like I was a stranger." Her voice cracked as tears welled up. "I tried, Mom. I prayed every night, but after the 4th miscarriage, he never touched me again." Nora stood and walked to the window. Snow still fell outside, tiny flakes drifting through the glow of the streetlights. Anger began to rise inside her, hot and fierce. She could still hear Gregory Mercer's words that night echoing in her mind. A woman who can't bear children should learn to stay silent. The man who once judged others with authority had used that same power to disguise his own cruelty. Nora clenched her fists until her palms bled. "I'm scared of them," Lily whispered. "Don't go back there, Mom. They have money power. You can't win." Nora turned her eyes blazing. "Have you forgotten who I am? I once led a national team to the World Championships. They called me reckless, blind, stubborn, but I still won. Because every time people thought I was broken, I stood back up. And this time, I'll do it again." She took her daughter's trembling hand, her voice softening. "You don't have to be strong right now. You just have to promise me not to give up." That night, Nora didn't sleep. She sat at her desk, opening her old laptop. One by one, she pulled up years of bank statements, each transfer she'd made to support Lily throughout her marriage. Every transaction was both a record of love and a wound reopening in her heart. Colin had once texted her, "Stay out of it. Lily needs to learn independence." But looking at the numbers now, Nora saw the truth. They had never seen Lily as family. She gathered every document and organized them neatly into a single file, labeling it in red ink, "Legal Evidence Mercer Case." As dawn approached, Lily finally drifted into a deep sleep. Nora stepped out onto the balcony, gazing down at the snow-covered street. A patrol car passed by its headlights, sweeping across the corner. She recognized the officer inside, Marco Ruiz, one of her former students. "Marco," she called softly. He turned, eyes widening in surprise. "Coach Bennett, you're back." Nora nodded, her voice steady. "I need your help. Something happened at the Mercer house tonight." Marco's face grew serious. "I've seen Lily at the hospital a few times. She always said she fell down the stairs. I suspected something wasn't right." Nora's throat tightened. "Now I know for certain," she said quietly. "It wasn't an accident. It's abuse, both physical and psychological." Marco nodded firmly. "I'll file a report the moment you're ready." When Nora returned to the apartment, the first light of morning was spilling across Lily's face. She was still asleep, but her breathing had steadied. Nora sat beside her, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "My sweet girl," she murmured, "they think I'll stay silent. But they've forgotten I've fallen before, lost everything, and still stood up again. This time, I'll rise for you." Her hand rested gently on Lily's hair, her eyes fierce with determination. "Tomorrow we begin. No one will ever strip you of your dignity again." Outside, the snowfall had stopped. Dawn spread across Asheville, painting the rooftops in gold. Inside the quiet apartment, Nora sat watchful beside her daughter, her gaze unwavering as steel. And in that stillness, a vow took root in her heart. The battle for justice had just begun. The next morning, a pale sun rose over the Blue Ridge Mountains, its faint light spilling into the small apartment. Nora brewed coffee, her mind set and calm. Lily sat silently by the window, her fingers wrapped around a cup of cold tea. Her eyes were dull. Her lips cracked, her face pale, as if she had forgotten what warmth and love felt like. "You need to see a doctor." Nora said softly. "You can't keep going like this." Lily didn't look up. "It won't help, Mom. There's nothing left. They made me believe I'm worthless." Nora placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's why I'm going back. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to show them you were never weak." Lily blinked. "What are you going to do?" Nora's eyes hardened. "Take back your dignity," she said, "and for every woman they've ever looked down on." That afternoon, Nora returned to the Mercer estate. The snow had stopped, but the ground was slick with ice. The iron gate stood ajar. A guard stepped forward. "The Mercers aren't receiving visitors today." Nora met his gaze. "They'll see me." She stepped past him, her boots crunching on the gravel. When the front door opened, Sylvia Mercer appeared in a green velvet gown, holding a glass of wine. "You again," she sneered. "I thought last night was enough." "I came to collect my daughter's things," Nora said evenly, "and to talk." Sylvia smirked. "Talk Lily's fragile, unstable. Leaving was the best thing you ever did for her." Nora's jaw clenched. No, the worst thing was letting her fall into this house. From the staircase came slow footsteps. Colin appeared in a gray suit, his arrogance as sharp as his smile. "Mother-in-law, you should know your place. Your daughter has problems. I've been patient long enough." Nora turned to him. "Patient. You left her outside in the freezing cold and called that patience." Colin shrugged. "She needed air. I didn't force her." Nora gave a bitter laugh. "You didn't force her, you just watched. Like your father, the great judge who calls silence justice." A cane struck the marble floor. Gregory Mercer entered, silver hair gleaming, his expression stern. "Watch your words, Nora. I won't entertain slander." Nora stepped closer. "Slander. You call leaving my daughter to freeze a lesson in discipline. You preach justice your whole life, yet you're the first to violate it." Gregory's voice hardened. "Weak women must learn endurance. Your daughter's fragility is inherited." The words cut deep, but Nora only smiled. "You're right," she said quietly. I passed something down to her, the instinct to fight, and I'll use it against you." Colin laughed coldly. "What's your plan, sue me? You have no proof, no witnesses." "I have integrity," Nora replied, "and people who've seen the truth." Footsteps echoed behind her. Marco Ruiz, a young police officer and Nora's former student, entered, his breath visible in the cold. "I filed a report on suspected abuse," he said firmly. Traffic cameras recorded Mrs. Lily Mercer sitting outside for nearly an hour while the family dined inside. The room went silent. Gregory glared. "You're ending your career, officer." Marco didn't flinch. "I'm doing my duty. The law serves justice, not power." Sylvia's hand trembled. She forced a laugh. "You think a few photos can ruin us?" Nora turned to her, her voice steady. "I don't want to ruin anyone. I want justice. From now on, everything you do will be recorded. I'm no longer a desperate mother. I'm Lily Bennett's legal guardian. There are no Mercers in her life anymore." For a long moment, no one spoke. Gregory's face hardened. Colin's smirk faded. Marco stepped beside Nora, calm and unwavering. Sylvia hissed, "You'll regret this." Nora didn't turn. "Maybe. But at least I still know what regret feels like. You've forgotten." She walked toward the door, sunlight pouring across her shoulders, her shadow stretching across the red carpet. Each step echoed like a verdict against the Mercer name. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines as the snow began to melt. Marco followed beside her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. Nora nodded. "More than ever. They think I'm just an old woman past her prime, but I still have strength and one reason to fight: my daughter." They passed through the iron gate just as a sharp crash broke the silence behind them. Sylvia's wine glass had slipped from her hand, red liquid spilling across the carpet like blood. Nora didn't turn back. In her eyes there was no fear, only unyielding resolve. The first battle had begun, and this time she would be the one to strike first. That night, Nora sat alone on the sofa, the soft yellow light reflecting through the small window. In the next room, Lily slept, her breath faint and uneven. Since the confrontation with the Mercers, Nora understood one thing clearly. If she wanted to win, she had to survive first. She had to protect her daughter before she could strike back. Nora brewed a cup of ginger tea and opened her laptop, replaying the video Marco had sent her. The footage showed Lily sitting on the porch in the snow, the Mercer mansion blazing with warm light behind her. Nora saved a copy and secured it with a password. That was her first weapon. She had once trained fighters and knew that victory didn't come from strength alone, but from endurance. And this time, she was the fighter. The door to Lily's room creaked open. Her daughter stepped out, dark circles shadowing her eyes. "Mom, you're still awake." "No," Nora said quietly. "I'm just thinking about where to begin." "Please don't do anything more," Lily murmured. "I just want peace." "There's no peace in silence," Nora replied firmly. "You've endured 3 years of it. Now it's my turn to speak." Lily lowered her head as tears welled up. "They have power money. You can't beat them." Nora placed her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder, her tone soft but certain. "When people think I've fallen, I get back up. This time I'll do it for you." She took out an old folder. "These are the bank records. Every transfer I made will prove they took what wasn't theirs." Lily's hands trembled as she held the papers. "You kept all of this?" "Every dollar I sent is proof you were never alone," Nora said, "and now it will become justice." The next morning, Nora took Lily to see a therapist. Dr. Linda Patel, a kind-eyed woman, greeted them with a warm smile. After an hour of private conversation, the doctor stepped out, her voice calm and serious. "She's severely depressed. What she needs most is time and safety." Nora asked quietly. How long will it take? No one knows, Dr. Patel replied. But with you beside her, she has a chance. Lily squeezed her mother's hand and whispered, I'll try. That afternoon, Marco stopped by carrying a small paper bag. I brought something he said, setting it on the table. And I have updates. I submitted the report. My superiors are reviewing it, but I suspect the Mercers will try to interfere. Nora looked him straight in the eye. Can you move it to the state level? Yes, Marco said after a pause, but you need to be ready. They'll hit back hard. Nora gave a faint smile. I faced hard hits all my life as long as Lily stays safe. She will be. Marco promised, his tone steady. Lily came out of her room, a weak smile flickering on her face. You really came? She asked softly. Yes, Marco said, his eyes sincere. And this time, I'm not just your mother's former student. I'm standing for justice. Lily's cheeks flushed slightly and Nora smiled, seeing a spark of light return to her daughter's eyes. That evening, Nora opened her notebook and wrote carefully, across the top, Operation Mercer. Phase 1, protect Lily. Phase 2, expose the evidence. She closed her pen, exhaled, and leaned back. Outside, the wind brushed against the roof. A car horn sounded somewhere in the distance. Everything seemed quiet, but inside her, a storm was brewing. Near midnight, a noise startled her. Something slid under the door and landed at her feet, a thick envelope. Nora picked it up and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. The letters rushed and uneven. Stop going after the Mercers. If you don't, someone will disappear just like your daughter almost did that night. She froze, reading it twice. Then she folded the paper carefully. Her eyes shifted toward Lily's room, where her daughter still slept peacefully. In the golden light, Nora's face hardened, her eyes blazing with resolve. Fear no longer had a place in her heart. She took a photo of the letter and sent it to Marco with a short message. It's begun. A few moments later, his reply appeared on the screen. I'm ready, Mrs. Bennet. Nora sat still for a long while, listening to the sound of sleet and melting snow tapping on the roof. Her thoughts drifted to the years she had spent in the ring, every bruise, every fall, every fight. She had once told her students that the greatest victory wasn't defeating an opponent, but standing tall after being knocked down. Now that lesson was for her. Her opponent wasn't just the people who had hurt Lily, but the entire system that protected them. Her voice was low, steady, unshakable. You chose this war, she whispered, and I won't lose. Outside the window, snowflakes fell softly, melting under the glow of the streetlights. Dawn would come soon, and with it a mother ready to fight a battle with no retreat for the daughter she loved more than her own life. On Monday morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, falling across Nora's tired face. She had stayed awake all night reviewing every document, every bank statement, each printed line, cutting into her heart like a blade. Beside her lay a red-marked folder labeled Mercer Case Phase 2. Today, Nora would turn her anger into action. She gently woke Lily. Eat something, sweetheart. We have to meet a lawyer. Lily looked drained. A lawyer, Mom? We can't afford one. Nora smiled faintly. I know someone. He owes me a favor from my coaching days. 2 hours later, they stepped into a modest office downtown. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair looked up from his pile of papers. Daniel Cho, a well-known sports attorney and an old friend of Nora's. He stood smiling warmly. Coach Bennett, it's been too long. Call me Nora, she replied. I need your help. It's about my daughter. After hearing her story, Daniel sat silently for a moment, then spoke carefully. This will be difficult. The Mercers have deep influence. But with financial evidence and credible witnesses, we can bring them to court. Nora pulled out a stack of bank records from her folder and laid them on the desk. Every transfer I made for Lily's support is here. Most of it was used by Colin for himself. I want to prove he misappropriated it." Daniel nodded. "Good. I'll also need her medical records and a psychological evaluation." That afternoon, they returned to Dr. Linda Patel's clinic. In the warm, softly lit office, Linda handed Nora a printed report. Severe depression, she said, her tone calm but firm, caused by prolonged emotional abuse. If presented in court, this is strong evidence. Nora's eyes glistened, but she smiled faintly. "Thank you, doctor. You didn't just help my daughter, you gave us a chance." On the way home, Lily was quiet. Nora glanced over. "You okay, honey?" Lily whispered, "I'm scared to go to court, Mom. I can't bear to see them again." "No one's forcing you to face them," Nora said softly. "You just need to live. I'll stand for you." That evening, Marco stopped by dressed in plain clothes, carrying a brown file folder. "This contains a copy of the traffic footage and my official statement," he said. "I've already sent it to the state, but you should keep a backup in case anyone tampers with it." Nora took the folder and smiled gratefully. "You've gone above and beyond, Marco." He shook his head. "I'm only repaying the woman who taught me never to bow to injustice." Lily stepped out, looking frail but with a spark of light in her eyes. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" she asked. Marco hesitated, then nodded. They shared a simple chicken soup meal. Nora sat quietly watching them talk, feeling a small weight lift from her chest. For the first time in months, her daughter smiled, even if only for a moment. After dinner, Nora opened her laptop and video called Daniel. "I have copies of the footage, witness statements, financial records, and Lily's medical report." Daniel's eyes brightened. "That's enough to file, but Nora, be prepared, they'll hit back hard. The Mercers won't stay quiet." "I know," Nora replied calmly. "They chose this fight. I won't back down." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Nora organized every document, labeling each file carefully. A1 bank records, A2 medical report, A3 video footage and testimony. On the first page, she wrote in bold capital letters, "Justice for Lily." Beneath it, she signed her name. Close to midnight, her phone rang. It was Daniel. "Nora, I just got word. The Mercers hired one of the biggest law firms in Raleigh. They plan to countersue, claiming defamation." Nora's tone was calm but firm. "They can attack all they want. I have the truth and witnesses." Daniel paused. "Good. Tomorrow I'll file the official complaint." When the call ended, Nora sat in silence. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. She thought of the years she had spent training athletes in the biting cold, of how she used to tell them, "It doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is the last time you must stand." Tonight she was teaching herself that same lesson. She looked toward Lily's room, where her daughter slept peacefully under the warm glow of the lamp. Nora knew the road ahead would be long, but at least they had started walking. Helplessness had turned into quiet determination. As the clock neared 2 a.m, Nora closed her laptop and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow we file. You won't be a victim anymore, Lily. You'll be proof that truth still wins." She turned off the light. Outside, snow drifted down softly, settling over the quiet city like a promise. In the dark, Nora smiled faintly. The battle lines were drawn, and this time she wasn't just fighting for her daughter. She was fighting for every mother who had ever been dismissed, silenced, or underestimated. Morning settled over Asheville beneath a veil of mist, the air so cold it numbed the hands. Nora woke early, brewed coffee, and opened the window, watching the slope outside her house fade into a blur of white. She knew that today the real storm would begin. At the table, Lily sat folding dried petals into her notebook. "Mom, I just want to forget," she said softly. "You don't need to forget," Nora replied. "You just need to remember you survived." The phone rang. It was Daniel Cho. "Nora, they've filed a countersuit. Gregory hired the firm Halpern and Graves. They're accusing you of defamation and damaging the Mercer family's reputation." Nora gave a cold smile. "Just as I expected." "There's more," Daniel continued. "He's been calling his contacts among the judges. I fear they'll try to block our case before it even reaches court." "That only proves they're afraid," Nora said firmly. That afternoon, Daniel invited them to his office. Lily held the document in her trembling hands, her face pale. "They're saying I have a mental disorder, that I hurt myself to blame them." Nora clasped her daughter's hand. "They're not after your sanity. They're after your dignity." "Don't let them win," Daniel added. "We'll request an independent evaluation, but we need more witnesses. Marco is one." But who else saw Lily that night? Nora suddenly remembered a name, Martha Hale, the former housekeeper. She cared about Lily. "I'll find her." Daniel nodded. "Be careful. They may have already gotten to her." That evening, Nora called Marco. He sent her an address. "Martha Hale, Southern Suburbs, lives with her granddaughter." "Thank you," Nora replied. "I'll go tomorrow." That night, Lily fretted. "Mom, don't go alone. They could try to hurt you." Nora stroked her daughter's hair, her voice steady. "I used to teach people how to fight. Now it's my turn to fight for real." Early the next morning, Nora drove through pine forests heavy with fog. Martha's house was small and worn, its brown roof stained green with moss. A young woman answered the door, eyeing Nora warily. "Who are you looking for? I need to speak with Mrs. Hale. It's about Lily Mercer." The girl hesitated, then disappeared inside. Minutes later, Martha appeared, hunched and silver-haired. When she heard Lily's name, her hands trembled. "I can't help. They've warned me. They threatened you," Nora asked quietly. "I just want peace," Martha whispered. Nora pulled from her coat a photograph of Lily as a child, smiling brightly in her martial arts uniform. "You once told her never to let anyone silence her. Now I'm telling you the same thing. If you stay silent, they'll keep winning." Martha's eyes softened. "I remember that night." "Mrs. Sylvia forced her onto the porch for being disrespectful. I begged to let her in, but they told me to shut up if I wanted to keep my job. Would you testify?" Nora asked. Martha hesitated. "They have money. I have none." "I have truth and witnesses," Nora said firmly. "All I need is your honesty." Martha lowered her head. "Give me 2 days. I need to prepare. That's all I ask." Nora said and left. On the way home, rain began to fall lightly. Nora pulled over and sent a message to Daniel. "Found the witness. Prepare the files." Meanwhile, inside the Mercer mansion, Gregory slammed his hand on the oak table. "We have to stop her now. Call the press spread that she's exploiting her daughter's illness." Colin nodded. "I've already hired a PR firm. Next week there'll be an article, 'The Unstable Mother.'" Sylvia sat motionless, her tone icy. The public believes power, not tears. But on the other side of town, Nora wasn't crying. In the small apartment, she sat with Daniel and Marco on a video call. Daniel said 3 sets of evidence: financial, medical, and witness. Once Martha signs, they can't escape. Marco added, "I've alerted the department. If they spread false news, we'll countersue for defamation." Nora smiled faintly. "They want a media war. Then we'll win with truth." Lily stepped forward, her voice shaky but determined. "Mom, I want to testify." Nora froze. "You're not strong enough yet. I'll never be strong if I stay silent," Lily said, her eyes burning with resolve. Nora looked at her pride breaking through her worry. "All right, but no matter what happens, you must remember you are innocent." "I promise," Lily whispered, gripping her mother's hand tightly. Outside, snow began to fall again, the sky thick and gray. In that small apartment, a mother, a daughter, and a young officer sat around the table drafting their plan for the battles ahead. They knew the other side had wealth influence and media power, but here they had truth, courage, and love. Nora lifted her gaze toward the window where snowflakes drifted in the pale light. "They may control this whole city," she said softly, "but they'll never control our conscience." The morning of the trial, Asheville was covered in a thick gray mist. Nora gripped Lily's hand tightly as they climbed the cold stone steps. Every step was a declaration that they would not bow to power. Inside, white light glared off the rows of wooden benches. Daniel Cho was already waiting. "They brought 5 lawyers," he said quietly. "But don't worry, we have the truth." Nora nodded, her gaze steady. Lily sat beside her, her hands trembling slightly, but there was no longer emptiness in her eyes. The courtroom doors opened. The Mercer family entered like actors on stage. Gregory wore a black suit adorned with his old judge's pin, Sylvia cold and composed, and Colin with that half smile as he passed them. Nora didn't look at them, only drew a deep breath to steady herself. Judge Prescott, once Gregory's colleague, struck his gavel. Daniel rose and began. "We present 3 categories of evidence proving emotional abuse toward Mrs. Lily Bennett financial, medical, and first-hand testimony." He opened the folder and displayed the bank statements showing Nora's financial transfers to Lily, most of which Colin had spent on himself. "This is proof of misappropriation." One of the Mercer attorneys immediately stood. "Irrelevant to the case." The judge nodded. Objection sustained. Daniel calmly moved to the next point. Dr. Linda Patel confirms the patient suffers severe depression caused by family pressure. "Objection," another lawyer interrupted. "We have a conflicting report indicating the patient exaggerated her condition." The room murmured. Nora's heart pounded as she fought back her anger. Daniel then played the recording Marco had secured. Sylvia's voice rang out clearly. "Leave her on the porch. She'll come to her senses." Then Colin's cold tone followed. "If she can't handle it, she can leave." The courtroom went silent. Daniel said, "This is direct evidence." The Mercer lawyer shot up again. "Objection. This recording was made without consent. It violates privacy laws." Judge Prescott struck the gavel. "The evidence is dismissed." The air grew heavy. Nora felt her heart crack. Daniel looked at her apologetically. "We still have the witness he said and called for Martha Hale." The elderly maid walked in her hands, shaking. "I saw them force Miss Lily to stand outside in the cold," she said softly. "I begged them to let her in, but they refused." "Do you have any photo evidence?" the opposing lawyer pressed. "No, only my word." "Weren't you dismissed for stealing Martha?" Froze, trembling. "No, I was forced to quit." The lawyer smirked. Unreliable. Judge Prescott's tone was icy. "The statement is recorded but lacks credibility." Nora stood abruptly. "They're smearing her to cover their own crimes," Mrs. Bennett ordered. The gavel struck again. Nora sank back down, fury boiling inside her. Gregory stood, his deep voice carrying across the room. "My family never abused anyone. My son tried to help his wife through her struggles. Mrs. Bennett," he turned to Nora with a faint smile, "is simply an overbearing mother who made her daughter dependent." His words hit like stones. Lily bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. Nora squeezed her hand and whispered, "Look up, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong." But the Mercers kept attacking. They presented a falsified medical report claiming Lily suffered from delusional disorder. Judge Prescott glanced at it and nodded coldly. Daniel struggled to stay composed. "Your Honor, I request time to verify this. There's no hospital seal on this document." The judge replied, "Granted." The court will recess for 2 days. The gavel struck, but Nora's rage still burned. In the hallway, Colin approached, leaning in close. "See, Mrs. Bennet, justice belongs to those who can pay for it." Nora met his eyes, her voice low and firm. "Justice can be bought, but conscience cannot. One day you'll pay the price." Colin smirked and walked away. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "We still have options. Don't lose faith." Nora exhaled slowly. "No, I'm more awake than ever. This isn't just Lily's case anymore. It's a battle between power and truth." At the end of the corridor, Marco lifted his phone. "I've backed up the recording. If the court won't hear it, the public will." Nora nodded. "Good. They want silence will make the whole city listen." Outside, snow blanketed the steps in white. Nora and Lily descended slowly, their shoulders touching. The wind bit at their faces, but their eyes shone with quiet fire. They both knew the real fight had only just begun. 2 days passed, and Asheville lay under a curtain of snow and rain. On Tuesday morning, Nora pulled on her thick coat and walked into the courthouse beside Lily and Daniel. No one spoke, but they all knew today could change everything. Inside, the air was heavy as lead. The Mercer family was already seated, their faces calm, confident. Gregory leaned back in his chair, eyes cold as stone, while Colin smirked as though victory was already his. Lily sat beside her mother, her hands clasped tightly together. Nora rested hers on the cold wooden table, the chill seeping through her skin. Judge Prescott entered, his tone dry and distant. After reviewing the case, the court does not recognize sufficient evidence to confirm abuse. However, the petition for divorce is granted. He paused, his voice monotone, almost mechanical. Assets will be divided according to contribution. As the respondent maintained the household finances, the majority will go to Mr. Colin Mercer. The silence in the room was suffocating. Lily looked up, her lips trembling. "So I get nothing. You will receive temporary support for 6 months, the judge replied flatly. Nora stood abruptly. "Your Honor, you're ignoring evidence and testimony. You worked with Gregory Mercer before, didn't you?" The gavel struck sharply. "Mrs. Bennet, order in the court. Any further outbursts and you'll be removed." Daniel gently tugged her arm, urging her to sit, but Nora's eyes still burned with fury. Gregory leaned toward his lawyer, speaking just loud enough for her to hear. "Justice still stands where it should." His words sliced through her like a blade. When the session ended, Nora helped Lily into the hallway. The young woman looked hollow, her eyes vacant. "Mom, all your effort, it was for nothing." "No," Nora said hoarsely. "Their justice can be bought, but ours cannot." Colin emerged, adjusting his tie, his smile cruel. "Thank you for setting me free, Mrs. Bennet. Now Lily can go back to her pills and fantasies." Nora met his gaze, her voice low but edged with steel. "You may have won in court, but you'll lose to your own conscience and to the public." Colin shrugged. "The public forgets fast." Then he walked away. Marco waited in the hall. "I recorded everything. Even if the court ignores it, the media will listen. Should I send it to the reporters?" Daniel hesitated. "That's risky." Nora raised her head, her eyes sharp. "They've used the law to twist the truth. Now we'll use the truth to break their silence." That afternoon, they left the courthouse in heavy snow. Lily sat quietly in the car, staring through the fogged window. "I'm so tired, Mom," Rest Nora whispered. "When you wake up, things will be different." That evening in their small apartment, Nora and Daniel made plans. "We'll send the audio to the Asheville Daily," Daniel said. "But it's risky. They might sue us." "Let them," Nora replied. "They can't silence everyone." Marco added, "I'll verify the recording's authenticity. The public deserves the truth, not their excuses." Lily stepped out of her room holding a letter. "I wrote an appeal. I want to sign it." Nora froze. "Are you sure they won't stop?" Lily looked up, her eyes red but unwavering. I don't need them to stop. I just need to live honestly. Nora pulled her into her arms, tears brimming but her voice steady. Then we'll fight together. That very night, the story went viral across social media. Shocking audio from Mercer case. Victim left outside during snowstorm. The recording played chilling and raw. Leave her outside until she comes to her senses. Outrage flooded the internet. Comments poured in demanding an investigation. By morning, reporters gathered outside Nora's apartment. A female journalist called out, "Mrs. Bennett, can you confirm the recording's authenticity?" Nora looked straight into the camera. "Yes, I'm the mother of the woman left to freeze in the cold. Anyone who's ever had a daughter will understand what that feels like." Her words spread everywhere. The Mercer case dominated headlines. Women's organizations launched petitions demanding the case be reopened. Gregory was suspended from his advisory position with the court, and Halpern and Graves issued a statement distancing themselves from the Mercers. That afternoon, Daniel arrived with new papers. The appellate court accepted the appeal. We have another chance. Lily sat on the couch, tears shining in her eyes. Really, Mom? Nora nodded, squeezing her hand. Justice doesn't live in a courtroom. It lives in those brave enough to stand up. Marco smiled warmly. Now they're the ones who should be afraid. Outside, the snow had stopped the sky, clearing into a pale blue. Nora gazed out the window as the sunset stretched across the rooftops. The first legal battle had ended in bitter defeat, but the fire inside her burned brighter than ever. News of the leaked recording spread like a winter storm. Within one night, every social platform and local TV station was talking about the Mercer case. The clip of Nora standing before the camera, her voice rough but steady as she said, "I am a mother whose daughter was left out in the snow," became a rallying cry for those who had been silenced for too long. The next morning, Nora's phone rang endlessly. Strangers called to show support. Women's groups requested interviews, and journalists camped outside her building. Daniel sent her a short message. "Public opinion is on our side. Stay calm, Nora." She replied simply, "I'm not fighting for attention, Daniel. I'm fighting for the truth." Inside their small apartment, Lily sat watching the morning news. The anchor's voice rang out. Social groups are demanding the appellate court reopen the Mercer case. Allegations have surfaced about a personal relationship between Judge Prescott and Mr. Gregory Mercer. Lily turned to her mother, her voice trembling. "Mom, they believe us now." Nora nodded, her eyes distant. "Belief is only the beginning, Lily. They need to act." Meanwhile, at the offices of Mercer and Associates, Colin slammed the newspaper onto the table. "All this because of that cursed recording. Who leaked it?" Gregory sat calmly, though his fingers trembled slightly. "Who leaked it doesn't matter. What matters is putting out the fire before it spreads." Sylvia's tone was icy. "We'll sue them for defamation." "Do it," Gregory said, "but make sure we can prove the recording was falsified. If not, we'll look guilty." While the Mercers plotted, Marco and Daniel were already coordinating. Marco sent Asheville Daily a verified copy of the audio file, along with an official technical statement confirming its authenticity. Daniel leaned back in his chair and said, "Once they confirm this, the Mercers will have nowhere to hide." Nora listened silently, tapping her fingers on the table. "I used to tell my students that the winning strike must come at the right moment," she said quietly. "This is that moment." 3 days later, Asheville Daily's front page blazed with the headline, "Former Judge Gregory Mercer, accused of misusing influence in his son's case." The report exposed the connection between Prescott and Gregory and quoted an anonymous court clerk. "We were told to remove the recording from evidence." The revelation sent shockwaves across the city. On social media, the hashtag #JusticeForLily exploded. Thousands of comments poured in. A mother may not defeat wealth, but she can awaken justice. That afternoon, Nora was invited to speak at a women's forum at the community center. She stood on stage in a simple coat holding a crumpled page of notes. The lights cast a golden hue across her weathered face. "I am not a hero," she began. "I am just a mother who watched her daughter be cast aside. When the law stays silent, we must speak." The hall erupted in applause. A young woman stood up crying, "Thank you for speaking for all of us." From the back, Marco watched with quiet pride. He knew the quiet coach he once trained under had become a voice for countless women. That night at home, Lily sat by her mother. "I thought people would turn their backs on us," she said softly, "but they're standing with us." Nora smiled faintly. "Not because we're lucky, but because you dared to tell the truth." Lily's eyes shimmered for the first time in months, but victory was short-lived. The next morning, Daniel received a call. His tone was urgent. "Nora, be careful. The papers received anonymous death threats. They mentioned you." Nora's voice was calm. "I've faced fear before. They can't silence me now." Later that day, word leaked that the state's judicial board had opened an investigation into Gregory Mercer. The appellate court announced that the previous verdict was suspended pending a full review. Daniel called with relief in his voice. "They're listening now, Nora. Real justice is moving." Nora's eyes filled with tears. "Not for me, Daniel, for my daughter." That afternoon, Marco arrived with a bouquet of white daisies. "Asheville's talking about you," he said with a grin. "They're calling you the Iron Mother." Nora chuckled softly. "That sounds fierce, it fits," Marco replied. "You didn't bow to power, and because of that, truth finally has a voice." That evening, Lily opened her laptop. Images of her mother filled the screen, her calm smile, her fiery eyes. Mom Lily whispered, "I see myself in you." Nora took her daughter's hand, her voice steady and warm. "Justice doesn't live in verdicts, my dear. It lives in the courage to speak the truth." Outside the window, snow drifted softly under the streetlights. The city was quiet, but in Nora's heart, a new wave was rising, not of anger, but of hope. She knew the fight was far from over, but now they were no longer alone. On the table lay the signed appeal beside a folded newspaper, the headline bold and unmissable: "Community demands justice for the forgotten mother and daughter." Nora smiled to herself. For the first time in years, the winter didn't feel cold. A week after the Mercer case was reopened, the snow in Asheville began to melt. Rare sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window, spilling across the table where Nora was kneading dough. The scent of baked apples, cinnamon, and butter filled the apartment, carrying with it the warmth of a new beginning. Lily sat at the table peeling thin slices of apple. Her face still looked tired, but there was a quiet light in her eyes. "You're making apple pie again, Mom?" she asked. Nora smiled. "Yes, the first recipe you ever learned with me. We're doing it again, but this time not for anyone's approval." Lily nodded and laughed softly. It had been a long time since laughter filled their little home. That afternoon, Marco arrived with a grocery bag and his familiar warm grin. "I brought cinnamon and some chocolate." "Are you two planning to open a bakery?" Nora replied. "Maybe. A small one selling pies and teaching a few girls self-defense. What do you think?" Marco laughed. "Perfect. A place for sweetness and justice." Together, they arranged the trays and slid them into the oven. The soft ticking sound mixed with the rich aroma spreading through the kitchen. Lily looked at Marco and said quietly, "Thank you for not giving up on us." He smiled. Justice doesn't belong to anyone, but sometimes it takes someone's persistence to bring it into the light. When the pies were done, Nora poured tea and the three sat around the wooden table. "Marco," she asked any updates. He nodded. "The judicial board is collecting testimonies. Gregory Mercer has been suspended from all legal activities, and Colin Well, his law office, is almost empty." Nora was silent for a moment. "I don't take joy in that," she said softly. "I never wanted to destroy them, only to make them see the value of truth." Lily looked at her mother with admiration. "You've changed so much." Nora smiled. "Not really. I just choose to fight with compassion, now not with fists." That evening, Daniel stopped by with a folder in hand. "The hearing is set for next month," he said. "This time the public's on our side." "What should we prepare?" Nora asked. "Nothing more than honesty," Daniel replied. "Let them reveal who they really are." Nora nodded, her eyes glowing with calm resolve. After Daniel left, Lily cleared the table. "Mom," she said softly, "I want to start again. I want to do something for myself." "What do you have in mind?" Nora asked. Lily smiled gently. "I'm applying to work as an assistant at Dr. Patel's therapy center. I want to help women who've gone through what I did." Nora froze for a moment, then pulled her daughter into an embrace. "I'm so proud of you." "You found yourself again." Lily whispered. "No, Mom. You're the one who helped me find it." Night fell, and the city shimmered under streetlights. On the table, the pies cooled, slowly filling the room with a soothing sweetness. Nora opened her notebook and wrote in bold red ink, "Victory isn't the end. Victory is living true to your conscience." A soft knock sounded at the door. Marco stepped forward, holding a small box. "I brought you something," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a bronze keychain shaped like a kickboxing glove. "I wore it when I first joined your team," he explained. "Now I want you to have it." Nora looked at the gift, her smile tinged with emotion. "Thank you, Marco. Back then I only taught you how to kick higher. Now you've taught me how to stand taller." Lily reached for the keychain, turning it in her hand. "It's beautiful," she said. "Can I keep it?" Marco nodded. "Of course, but only if you promise to stay strong." Lily grinned, her eyes bright. "I promise." That night, after Marco left, mother and daughter sat by the window together. The snow had melted into shining puddles that reflected the headlights passing below. "Do you remember Nora asked when you were little, every time you fell, I made you stand up right away, I remember?" Lily said, smiling. "You told me no one can lift you forever." "That's right," Nora whispered. "But this time you stood up not for me, but for yourself." The room was silent except for the steady ticking of the clock. In the warm light, Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "Thank you for never letting go," she said softly. Nora looked down at her daughter, pride glowing in her eyes. "No one is born to stay down forever," she said. "We just need someone to remind us we still have worth." Outside, the night wind brushed past the window, carrying the last chill of a fading winter. Inside the small apartment, the scent of apple pie lingered warm, sweet and full of hope. Nora closed her notebook, gazing out into the quiet city. "Justice can be delayed," she whispered, "but it can never be buried, and every day we choose to live with kindness is a verdict against cruelty." One early spring morning, Nora received a call from Daniel. His voice was urgent. "Nora, I need to see you right away. It's important." She quickly put on her coat and headed to his law office. When she arrived, Daniel was leaning over his desk, a thick stack of documents in front of him. "I just got a copy of an anonymous letter sent from inside Halpern and Graves," he said. "Someone in their firm has turned against the Mercers." Nora frowned. Turned against them, Daniel slid the papers toward her. "Read this." The first page was a printed email exchange between Gregory and a former associate. In it, Gregory requested a small favor from Judge Prescott, offering a generous donation to the court's charity fund in return. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Nora felt her chest tighten. He bribed the court. Daniel nodded. And now we have proof. But we need to confirm the source. Whoever sent this could be in danger. Just then, Nora's phone rang again. A hoarse female voice spoke, trembling. "Mrs. Bennett, it's Martha Hale. I want to make things right." Nora froze. "Where are you, Cedar Cafe, corner of 3rd Avenue? I have something you need." Nora and Marco rushed there immediately. Martha sat in a corner, her shoulders hunched, eyes full of fear. She placed a small USB drive on the table. "This contains footage from the Mercers' home security cameras. I used to help manage the system, and they forgot to erase the data. It shows Mrs. Lilly being pushed outside the porch on Christmas Eve." Nora's breath caught. "Are you certain?" Martha nodded, her voice breaking. "I'm terrified, but my conscience won't let me stay silent." Marco took the USB gently. "You did the right thing," he assured her. "From now on, we'll make sure you're protected." Nora clasped Martha's hands. "You're not alone anymore. Thank you." That afternoon in Daniel's office, they played the footage. The screen flickered through falling snow, showing Sylvia opening the door, shoving Lily outside and slamming it shut. Gregory's voice could be heard saying coldly, "Leave her there until she learns her place." The room fell silent. Marco finally said, "They can't deny it now." Daniel reached for the phone. "I'll send this directly to the State Judicial Committee. They'll reopen the case immediately." Nora nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, but a faint smile forming. 3 years, and the truth finally speaks. 2 days later, the story exploded across the media. Headlines read, "New video exposes Mercer family's abuse." Every TV channel replayed the clip and the public erupted in outrage. Thousands of comments flooded injustice has finally returned. At the Mercer mansion, Gregory slammed his fist on the table. "Who dared leak that video?" Colin shouted. "I don't know, but we need to fight back." Sylvia collapsed into a chair, pale and trembling. "It's over Gregory. They have everything." Gregory's breathing grew heavy, his confidence cracking. "No, I won't go down." But the fire in his eyes had faded. Across town, Lily prepared her new testimony as Marco helped her sort the papers. She looked up nervously. "Do you think people really change?" "Yes." Marco said quietly, "When they finally face what they've done." Lily smiled faintly. "I still can't believe I'll face them again without fear. Because you're not alone anymore," he said, resting his hand gently on hers. A week later, the retrial began. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Gregory sat on the witness bench as a linked defendant. When the footage was played, the entire room fell silent. The sound of wind whistled faintly outside, broken only by Sylvia's ragged breathing. When Nora rose to speak, her voice was calm but resonant. "That is what they called discipline," she said. "But I call it cruelty." The new judge, a composed middle-aged woman, nodded. "The court recognizes this evidence and orders a criminal investigation into the Mercer family for abuse." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed everywhere. Colin leapt to his feet. "This is a setup. That video was edited." Nora turned to him, her tone cold and sharp. "If you believe that, then check the original file on your own firm's server." Colin froze, speechless. After the hearing, as people began leaving, Daniel turned to Nora with a smile. "This is a real victory." Nora looked out the window at the falling snow. "No, Daniel. It's a beginning. We've proven that justice can't be bought." That night, Marco drove Nora and Lily home. The radio broadcasted the latest report. The State Judicial Committee has officially suspended Gregory Mercer's advisory role and filed criminal charges for abuse against his daughter-in-law. Lily leaned her head against the window, whispering, "Finally, they're calling it what it is." Nora took her daughter's hand. "See, my dear, the power of truth isn't loud, but it's relentless. Once it speaks, no one can silence it." Lily smiled through her tears. "Mom, I used to think being weak meant failing, but now I know weakness just means you're still healing." The car crossed the bridge city lights shimmering on the water. Nora gazed ahead, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The long battle was nearly over. In the stillness of the night, she could hear it clearly, the rhythm of her heartbeat, steady and strong, echoing the sound of justice love, and her unshakable belief that in the end, truth always wins. Nearly 2 months after the retrial, the snow around Asheville had melted, revealing soft green fields beneath the spring sun. The breeze carried the scent of apple blossoms and the gentle sound of church bells. Nora stood outside her new bakery, sunlight glinting off the wooden sign that read, "The Second Chance Pies and Hope." The small shop sat on a quiet street filled with the warm aroma of butter, cinnamon, and renewal. Lily stepped out from the kitchen with a tray of steaming pastries. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright again. "Mom, our first customer's here," she said, her voice light and cheerful. Nora smiled. "Let me handle it." She turned toward the counter just as Marco walked in, dressed casually and carrying a bouquet of white tulips. "Congratulations on your grand opening," he said warmly. Lily grinned. "Are you buying all the pies today?" "Not all," Marco replied, laughing. "But I'm placing a long-term order. The police department will need pies every weekend." They all laughed together, sunlight spilling across their faces, 3 people once broken, now standing strong together. Moments later, Nora's phone rang. It was Daniel. "Nora, the state court just released the final ruling," he said. "Gregory Mercer has been stripped of all legal privileges. Colin's law license is suspended, and he's under medical supervision. It's finally over." Nora closed her eyes briefly. "No, Daniel, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of something right." Later that afternoon, after the customers had left, Lily wiped the tables and said quietly, "Mom, I used to think I'd never move on, but now I see that every scar teaches us how to love ourselves again." Nora nodded gently. Forgiveness isn't for those who hurt us. It's for ourselves to find peace. Marco sat nearby sipping coffee. "Mrs. Bennett, if justice is ever delayed again, what will you do?" Nora smiled. "I'll wait, but not in silence. The justice of the heart doesn't need a verdict, only compassion." Lily joined them, her eyes glowing. "Mom, I've been offered a permanent position at Dr. Patel's therapy center. They want me to lead support groups for women who've survived abuse." Nora's eyes widened. Truly, Lily beamed. "Yes, I want to help others like me." "You were right. Mom scars aren't ugly. They're proof we survived." Marco smiled at her with quiet pride. "You're becoming yourself again, Lily." She laughed softly. "Know a better version of myself." That evening, mother and daughter strolled through Pack Square. The lamplight shimmered on the wet cobblestones as people laughed and children chased each other around the fountain. A group of women recognized Nora and ran over to hug her. "Thank you," one said tearfully. "Because of you, we found the courage to stand up." Nora smiled modestly. "I only did what any mother would do for her child." Lily noticed Marco standing a few steps away and walked over. "Do you remember the first time you met my mom?" she asked. Marco chuckled. "Of course. I was a nervous rookie afraid of her lectures, but she ended up teaching me courage." "Are you still afraid now?" Lily teased. He shook his head. "No. Now I'm only afraid of losing people like you and your mom." Lily's eyes softened. "Thank you, Marco. You made me believe kindness still exists." The spring wind carried the scent of flowers and faint music from a street performer. From a distance, Nora watched them, her heart swelling with pride. Her daughter, once trembling in the cold, now smiled brightly beneath the spring sky. The next day, the Second Chance was bustling. A young journalist stopped by. "Mrs. Bennett," she asked, "what message do you have for women who are still suffering?" Nora thought for a moment, then answered, "Justice can be late, but love never is. If the world closes its doors, open your own. Everyone deserves a new beginning." The article went viral, shared by thousands. People began calling Nora the mother of Asheville's spring. Lily's new project at the therapy center gained attention, and she was invited to speak at a local university. One quiet evening after closing the shop, Nora and Lily sat on the porch, watching the streetlights glow. Nora said softly, "I used to think winning meant making them fall. Now I know victory is seeing you smile without fear." Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "And I know you didn't just save me, Mom. You saved those who still can't speak." Before going inside, Nora looked up at the stars. Justice may live in courtrooms, but happiness lives in the heart. As long as we keep it pure, we'll never lose our way. The wind chimes sang gently, the scent of apple pie lingered in the air, and Nora and Lily's lives turned a new page. One not of pain, but of courage, love, and faith. That no matter how the world changes, the human heart will always be where justice begins.